Give us free. Give us free.
Your Honor, please instruct the defendant that he cannot disrupt these proceedings with such outbursts.
Give us free.
If we are to have any semblance of order in this court,
Give us free.
Peace, unity, and welcome my conscious and unconscious family and friends. This is the all-new Black Village Community Podcast, and I am truly your host of the show, JC, aka Afro Black, dropping nothing but the raw and uncut, without any fear, as I use my mic as a spear to chucker you with liberated truth. I am your host and your native soldier in the struggle. My purpose and mission for this show is first to enlighten, inform, and engage. And I want to engage with all who claim to know the truth. All truth seekers and my native family, I welcome you. This show is dedicated to all our indigenous native ancestors and to all those who've carried the mantle of truth, and to every person with the ability to throw off the chains of comfortable habit and unwarranted assumption and move in a new, liberated direction that is guided by truth and observational evidence, no matter where that direction may lead you. My main objective and purpose here is freedom, mind, soul, and spirit. That being said, welcome to the Black Village Community Podcast, and much love from our great universal goddess and mother of all living here and above.
AC in the house.
You know I'm proud to be black, y'all, and that's a fact, y'all. And if you try to take what's mine, I take it back, y'all. It's like that. Liggy, 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 liggy. For that people, here's a serious song. It's right, not wrong. I should say right on. I gotta tell you something that you all should know. It's not a mystery, it's history, and here's how it goes. Now Harriet Tubman was born a slave. She was a tiny black woman, but she was raised. She was living to be given. There's a lot that she gave. Is not a slave in this day and age. I'm proud to be black. Goddamn, I'm tired, my man. Don't worry about what color I am, because I'll show you how ill this man can act. It can never be fixed because it is all fact. And if you give it away, I will not turn back. I'm proud of my name. My name is Daryl Mack. I'm black and proud, and I'll say it out loud. I'll share my story with the whole crowd.
This is how we ride and roll. Soldier for life for sure.
Hey, this is JC, aka Afro Black, and I am here with ya for another delicious Black Sunday to drop nothing but the raw and uncut here on the Black Village Community Podcast. And today's podcast subject matter is a continuation of last week's podcast subject matter, which is titled Black History is Indigenous Native History. Again, let me re-say that again. Black history is Aboriginal. Black history is indigenous native history. And that's what it's all about today. We're going to talk about that and verberate on that. Again, we're going to continue our subject matter from last week, which is about the Great Law of Peace. We're going to talk about the Great Law of Peace. Not everybody knows about the Great Law of Peace, and that's why we're going to talk about the Great Law of Peace, so that we can spread conscious truth to the conscious community. And you know what? I got my one and only, my queen, my wife, my partner, my soulmate here with me today to verberate on truth. Go ahead, Conscious Queen.
Hello, my beautiful people.
So you here with me today. You wasn't here with me last week. I'm not sure if you even made it the week before last, because you're a very hard-working indigenous woman. You feel me? Like all the indigenous, it's a whole history of strong black women. You feel me? As they say, the strength of a man is the backbone of a woman. And that is the truth, if you consciously comprehend the truth. You feel me? So today's podcast subject matter, I'm going to verberate on that, as well as going to verberate on some conscious update. I'm going to talk about some update, celebrity update. You feel me? I'm going to go on that as well. So we're going to get this thing started here today. We're going to get things started with our update as always. And today's update, as let me give you something. As we
interrupt this program to give you this special report. If you are not real, you may want to leave the room now. We are about to explode.
Celebrity House Negro update, as I like to call it, is a very special update. I'm going to talk about Keke Palmer. I mean, due to my conscious opinion, as well as my queen's conscious opinion, the House Negro celebrity tag really doesn't stick to Keke Palmer, because she's on a journey. She's on a journey. She's on a journey of truth. Would you agree, Queen?
Absolutely.
Keke Palmer is on a journey of truth, and you know what? She's discovering truth. But right now, there's a whole lot of gossip going on around about her, calling her a coon, saying she's denying her heritage, and what's sad about it is that a lot of these black folks who are making these accusations are the ones who are really ignorant to truth. They're unconscious and they don't even know it, because they've only went so far into history and they've stopped. They basically are doing what the white agenda wants them to do, only to stick to 1626 and claim that's the beginning and that's the end of slavery in North America, not knowing historical truth. But when it comes to Keke Palmer, as I said, she's on a journey. I'm going to let her, I'm going to play something and let her explain to you what's going on. But before I let her explain, let me let you hear about the gossip that's going around. And but this clip that I'm going to play right now, it's not really downing Keke. It's more or less telling the truth about the perspective and the journey that she's on. So let me play this clip and let you hear about some of what's going on with Keke Palmer.
Have you heard or did you see where Keke Palmer came out and said that she was not African and that she was an Aboriginal American? And this is something that, I've been claiming myself, but she is seeming to get a lot of pushback from people, I guess, mostly because, it's like there are a lot of people who still believe in that out of Africa theory. And so I wonder how supportive we can be of each other as a people when we really start looking at our history and really start going back and finding ourselves and our family and our heritage. Right. And then people are like, oh no, everybody's from Africa, and that's just not the case.
There you go. Well, that was just a little clip from the YouTube gossip that's going on, the blog and the internet, on Facebook and Twitter, the things that are going on about Keke Palmer making this statement. And you know what they're saying? That she is denying her African heritage. She's never made that statement. That's a false statement. So, the coon tag does not really apply to Keke. So I guess I might say I'm trying to vindicate the sister, because I really appreciate anybody, black, female or male, that is on a journey to open their mind to conscious truth. And so, I like what she's doing. I mean, I like what's going on with her. So let me play a clip. This clip I'm going to play right here. This is Keke Palmer, an upload that she put on YouTube. Okay, and this was in 2016. This upload was in 2016, 2015 upload that she put up where she speaks on her personal journey. So let me play that right now.
Talked to this man named Kevin yesterday on Instagram, and he was giving me so much information on really good books to read. Like, as y'all know, I've been always definitely, especially since my 18th, 19th year, been on a very spiritual journey. All the ways in which I can help myself that aren't always just out in the open, that you have to actually kind of in the school systems, or maybe your family don't necessarily know about them, but this is worldly information that is accessible to us all, and I started to realize that. Aside of that, I started to gain more knowledge about my African history that, I don't know much about because my ancestors were enslaved. It's so much fun learning and figuring these things out, and I think I'm definitely gonna have to plan a trip I know, and a family trip for my family and I to go to Africa so we can see all these things that we never really knew existed. Represent another part of our culture that is overshadowed by slavery. That I had ancestors that were kings and queens and that understood astronomy, and I love astrology. It's whoa, my ancestors were aware of all these things as well as spirituality, but they were also into the earth and our universe. Be able to kind of appreciate a time where things were simple, and try to understand that consciousness and bring it into modern. My mom always said I was always curious. Why? I've always been into learning and much information as I possibly can, and then creating my own opinion on it, and giving myself to have an individual choice and thought. To me, that is freedom.
There you go. Straight from Keke Palmer herself. She uploaded that on YouTube to set this thing straight. You feel me? So now let me have my queen read an article from what she actually said, and that's been actually blown out of proportion. Queen, go ahead and handle that there. Pick either one that you want to read from. I got two articles. One is actually saying, is Keke a coon? I mean, I couldn't believe when I saw that, questioning rather if she a coon or not. I mean, I think people have a twisted perspective of what makes a house Negro and a coon. And because a lot of these Pan-African Negroes who are blind to truth and stubborn and ignorant to truth, because they've went so far into African studies that they don't even want to realize or even acknowledge that there's more history out there, that there's another huge important piece to the puzzle that they are ignoring. So, Queen, go ahead and read that, please.
All right. Keke wrote, some blacks are native to the American land, such as Native Americans. We all know that all humans came from Africa at first and moved elsewhere. Through research, I'm learning that the idea that all blacks in America were slaves is simply not true. Just as Angela Bassett says in Jumping the Broom, my ancestors weren't slaves, they owned slaves. I remember during TJVP, my white teacher tried to tell me also that some blacks owned slaves. The idea had hurt me so that I immediately decided she was a racist and putting the blame on other blacks. As I've grown and gained more knowledge, I realized how great of a quote-unquote gag it would be if someone could use a phrase and a skin tone to control the people's psyche by creating emphasis on only one part of history. If you assume simply because of the color of your skin that you should carry only one side of your cultural American history, that falls under the ideology of what it means to be an African American.
Wow. Look what she did. She's intelligent. She's a smart black woman. She says, what if somebody, read that part again, if somebody assumes simply because, well, not that part. She's talking about how they're presenting only one part of history. What did she read that part again, Queen?
It says, as I have grown and gained more knowledge, I realized how great of a gag it would be if someone could use a phrase and a skin to control a people's psyche by creating emphasis on only one part of history. if you assume simply because of the color of your skin that you should carry only one side of your cultural American history that falls under the ideology of what it means to be African American.
She notices that that's what they're doing. Does she see? What would you say, Queen? She see what they're doing? No, she see the game that's being played.
Of course, it's a game that's being played. You know, she's not denying any African heritage because she hasn't come across anything to deny it yet. But to simply say that all people of dark skin color are immediately African is like saying all white people of light skin color are British.
And you know what? A white person will tell you in a minute if they're not British or not. They no, I'm not from England. I'm not British. But what about if somebody from England come here, move here? Like prime example, like John Oliver, who does the show Last Week with John Oliver. That show. He's from England. He moved here and became a citizen. Or like Ferguson. What's his name? Craig Ferguson. He moved here and became an American citizen. Now, he's an American, but he wouldn't consider himself an American to the degree that he would see his roots here. The thing about it is that even though white folks know that their ancestors immigrated here, they've been here so long, they feel like this is their country. The thing about it, they want to deny us our heritage as well. That's been their agenda from the very beginning of time when they came here to North America, to deny us our heritage, to deny us our culture, to deny us our identity, our language, our traditions. And then you know what? They have not changed that agenda, in my opinion. What do you think, Queen?
Absolutely not. They're still trying to place us into a box. You know, as we have done our family tree and we're growing and we're searching and we're talking to our family members on who came from where, you know, I'm finding from one side of my family that, you know, my grandmother's side were Norwegians. And then my grandfather can trace his roots all the way back to when white folks were mating with Native Americans, because my grandfather is part Native American and European mutt. So, and on my father's side, all I'm getting is Cherokee Indian. Can no one tell me anything else?
I find it funny how you say an American mutt.
Nah, he's European mutt.
He's
and Native American.
European mutt.
European mutt. Because
there's
just too much in that conglomerate to figure that one out.
You know what I find that odd? My mother used to say the same thing. That black people are just mutts. And I guess it's because black people we embrace everybody. We embrace Latinos, we embrace white people, we embrace Asian. It's us who get rejected from other people. We embrace everybody. But then you got that fragment, that fringe part of the white society that want to focus in on black people who've been oppressed, black people who've been brutalized, black people who've been politically and economically oppressed and depressed. And they've been depressed and oppressed for so long to the degree that they don't like white people. They don't like other races because of all the weight of this country, the negativity of the games that's been played to keep us from any type of economic stability. Not talk about, and not only economic stability, but social stability, family stability, breaking apart the families. You know, even though the white man broke apart the family during slavery, he didn't stop there. He continued, even after Emancipation Proclamation in the early 19th century, with putting our children in orphanages and breaking up the family and telling a woman if she had a man and she was going to collect welfare, he couldn't be in the house. So they continued the agenda to break the family up. Now the black family is learning to bring themselves together through culture, through heritage, through tradition, and they're looking for the truth of their identity. And you still got ignorant house Negroes out there, like I said, who are stuck in a time zone because they don't want to research history outside 1611 or 1626.
Or actually even outside of what the white man is programmed to tell them that they are. So they either think they're African or nothing else. So they don't want to be here. That is helping them take control of the land that does not actually belong to them.
Well, the thing I don't understand is this. I mean, I'll tell somebody in a minute. If I'm wrong, please prove me wrong, because if you prove me wrong, you've educated me. And instead, what I get a lot of is that these so-called intelligent Pan-African Negroes avoid people like me. I mean, I would love to have a conversation with one of them. I mean, because I used to be a Pan-Africanist myself. I know better, so I know what level they're on. I know what direction they're coming from. And so somebody like me, they just avoid. Like I say, they're stuck. They're stuck and they're stagnated in one position. They stuck on one level. And that's not true consciousness, because consciousness is a constant circle and process of learning. Consciousness is a continuous cycle and process of learning. So, I don't know. That's my take on it. But I see someone sitting here in the conference room before I play any more audio to turn this subject matter back onto the fact that we're going to continue the discussion on the great law of peace, which is the first constitution that our indigenous ancestors put together to bring peace amongst the tribes and the brethren and the sisters here on Turtle Island. So I see an area code of 770 sitting here in the conference room. You want to join us? Got anything you might want to say, or you just listening? I see an area code of 7. You're just listening? Wonderful, wonderful. If you got anything you want to...
Yes, I am. I'm enjoying the program.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. All right. Yeah, I'll keep you open. If you want to comment, you're open to comment on anything that we're discussing as we discuss this subject matter. So, as we continue...
Okay, well, thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. As I always say, this is the Black Village Community Podcast. You can chime in, join us at any time from 3 to 4 Pacific Standard Time here in the West Coast. You can chime in at 855-445-9340. You can also chime in at 857-232-0155. And don't forget the conference key to get through the conference door, which is 947595. Please join us here at the conference table of truth here on the Black Village Community Podcast. And so let us continue on our subject matter here. I think it's important, I never knew. I thought the Constitution and the Constitution that we have in this country was the first and only Constitution. But if you do research, you'll find out that there was a Constitution before the Constitution that we have here. Matter of fact, there was also a Constitution before that Constitution. Now, most people think of the Constitution that we have, which is, most people know that if you have any history knowledge, that when the so-called frameworkers, or those they call them the framers, are the ones who put together the Constitution, which is George Washington and Benjamin Franklin and Alexander Hamilton that most people know that it took them a while to put that document together, that they had to do some editing and rewriting and so forth. So you can find that's easy to find out. That's easy history to find out. But what most people don't know, and me myself, I found out on my journey of researching, that there was even a constitution that the framers put together before the final constitution which we have today, that we live by, which is the backbone of our country. And that constitution was called the Article of Confederation. And last week I played a little bit of that. And so, just to refresh our minds, this is only a 30-second piece from last week to get things started from what we talked about last week, so we can continue our discussion today on the great law of peace. Okay, so let me play that and we will continue our discussion.
So as Americans may dimly remember from history classes, the constitutional system we've been living under since 1788, the year of the first presidential election, was not the original American government. The first government set up by the Continental Congress was called the Articles of Confederation, and it was, in a word, bad. In 2 words, it was not good, which is why it only lasted 10 years. The problem with the Confederation is that it wasn't so much a framework for a national government as it was a firm league of friendship. A firm league of friendship. Friendship.
Now, I want to, I'm also going to play the history, the verbal history on the great law of peace, but I want to play that to get things started. I've read the Article of Confederation, which is the so-called first Constitution before the final work that they have today, and it reads a whole lot like the great law of peace, in my opinion. And as we continue our discussion, I also got a side-by-side comparison of the great law of peace and our present-day Constitution, and we're going to read from that so that you can see the comparison and see how the Constitution that we have today, how it was framed, and how it was framed from the great law of peace. But before we go into that, I want to play the history the second half of the story of the Great Law of Peace. And so I'm going to play this, and after we listen to this, we will continue our discussion on today's subject matter, which is Black History Month. And as I said, Black History Month is Indigenous Native History. And so we will continue our subject matter after this audio cast.
3 nations had now agreed to join the Great Law of Peace, but there were 2 more in the peacemakers' sights, the Seneca and the Onondaga. Both were powerful nations, renowned in war, and they had every reason to reject a peace that asked them to lay down their weapons. War might come at a great cost, but it also kept them safe from their enemies, and it gave them power. The Seneca had more warriors than any other nation, including the Onondaga. They had battled Tadadaho many times, repeatedly checking his ambition with their own. But he was far from their only enemy. They fought many wars outside the 5 nations which the peacemakers sought to unite, and to support those wars, they frequently raided their neighbors. Many of the envoys who now followed the peacemaker had suffered or lost loved ones in Seneca raids. Hiawatha and the peacemaker came braced for an argument, but they were greeted warmly. The Seneca had already heard of the peace treaty. Jigonsase, who was Seneca herself, had sent her own messengers explaining the principles of righteousness, health, and power that had convinced her to join the peacemaker. Aside from 2 chiefs who lived to the far west, the Seneca were ready to accept the treaty. But those 2 chiefs had the most warriors, and the most reason for not accepting the treaty. They lived on the border. A peace treaty among the 5 nations would protect the chiefs in the interior, but not them. If outsiders came to threaten the Confederacy, they would be the first to fall. The peacemaker called together all the envoys to discuss what they should do. None of them had participated in a council like this before, so at first it was chaos. Everybody talked over everybody else, and when nobody could be heard, they all grew angry. Egos swelled, and they began to hurl insults at each other. They swore that they could never work together, and threatened to return home, call up their warriors, and take to the warpath again. The peacemaker refused to let his life's mission be torn apart in an afternoon. He sat the envoys down around the longhouse fire, and declared that they must behave like brothers. The Mohawk and the Seneca were the elder brothers, who sat on one side of the fire and considered new proposals first. If they approved, the issue would then pass to the younger brothers, the Cayuga and the Oneida, who sat on the other side of the fire. And when they took turns like this, everyone's voice would be heard. In short, he established a bicameral legislature. There was no place yet for the Onondaga, so Hiawatha sat with the Mohawks. It had been years since he'd left his homeland, and since he had joined the peacemaker, the Mohawks had welcomed him as one of their own. Now, his place among them allowed him to be one of the first to review new proposals. He quickly helped to resolve the matter of the 2 Seneca chiefs to the far west. The Seneca would be honored as keepers of the western door. The Mohawk became keepers of the eastern door. When strangers approached, the keepers would be the first to judge them, and could call up the warriors from all 5 nations if they thought it necessary. But their first responsibility would be to offer peace to all who came, and welcome those who accepted it. Only those who refused the offer 3 times would be met with war. The chiefs accepted this, and the Seneca joined the Great Peace. Then Hiawatha made another proposal, one that he believed would convince Tadadaho to accept a treaty and join the final nation to their cause. Debate raged around the fire, but Hiawatha urged them all to keep an open mind. They had secured the eastern and western doors, but there could not be peace among them as long as the Onondaga, who lived in the middle, did not accept it. So the council put its faith in Hiawatha's plan. They all returned to the Onondaga together and met with Tadadaho. His temper flared when he saw the envoys from the Cayuga, whom he had so often bullied, now apparently joining forces against him. Even though he knew he was outnumbered, he immediately rose from his bench and threatened to crush them all with war. "We have not come for war," Hiawatha said, "but to make you an offer. We want you to be the leader of our council." Tadadaho sat back down. This was Hiawatha's suggestion. Tadadaho would have the seat of honor and hold a veto over all the laws which the Council of Nations considered. Including him, the Onondaga would have 14 representatives at the council, more than any other tribe. In terms of the great longhouse that the peacemaker wanted to build, the Onondaga would be the keepers of the fire. They would have the last vote on all proposals, and council meetings would always be held on their land. Tadadaho's mind spun with the possibilities. Through war, he had been able to claim more and more power for himself, but nowhere near as much as he stood to gain through this treaty. 4 nations wanted to stand before him and offer him the ability to decide their laws for them. how powerful he would become. While these thoughts were swirling through his head, Jigonsase stepped forward.
There you go, right there. That's just the third part. I got the final part I'm going to play in a minute. But just so far, I would encourage all my people, all my conscious, indigenous, aware people who are totally consciously aware of who they are, to research, if you haven't researched, the Great Law of Peace. Research the Constitution. Research the first Constitution, which is the Article of Confederation. And you will see, put it side by side, read it yourself, read it thoroughly. What I found quite odd is that within the Great Law of Peace, which is a very lengthy article, has over 117 laws. And so these laws govern the people to keep them in peace, keep them in harmony, keep them in at least in a conscious state of social respect and love one to another. But the Great Law of Peace was also an article put together to organize the people, to keep the people protected, and keep the people at peace with one another, so that they weren't not war against one another, would not fight and hurt one another. And so I had good reason to believe, due to the research that I've done, and I want to know what you think about this, Queen. I had good reason to believe that due to the fact that the Great Law of Peace was put together together firstly by 5 tribes who came together and who created a confederacy. And the Great Law of Peace spread throughout North America, throughout the Iroquois nations from thenceforth, after those 5 nations came together first. I had good reason to believe that due to the white man coming over here with the agenda to conquer and to set up his own form of government and to take this country for himself, knowing that it started with 5 tribes, which created a confederacy, and then they put together what is called 5 civilized tribes, chose 5 tribes, which they called the 5 civilized tribes, which was only done on the premise of them agreeing to assimilate to the white man's way of life. They had to take slaves. They had to allow the white man to take some of their wives. That's the white man again trying to weave himself and breed himself into the tribal people for the purpose of control, of course, and political control at that. But it appears to me that, due to the Great Law of Peace, and the majority of all the nations knew of the Great Law of Peace and knew the history behind it, that the white man had to have thought in his own mind, if I take 5 tribes, do a great treaty with them, a treaty of land, a treaty of peace, of laying down our arms and us not raping and killing their women and them not killing our women and our children, that maybe the other nations, other tribes will follow suit. The other nations and tribes will follow suit. And that was just something that came to my mind. What do you think, Queen?
Yeah, that sounds quite plausible, but that's not how that worked out for them, was it?
Well, of course not, because when you think about it, the white man never respected the Native American. He never respected, and I'm talking about the indigenous Native American. I'm not talking about these modern Native Americans today. No. He never respected the indigenous Native American. The game was already being played in the essence of the caste system that was done in America, which is something that a lot of historians ignore. You got very few of them that'll tell the truth, that America implemented a form of a caste system. Like I say, I'm going to say it again, good book. I would encourage anybody to download PDF file by Gregory Blavinsky titled Making Indians White. And you get an opportunity to, when you read this book, it's a book that you can't buy here in North America. I couldn't find it nowhere, but you can download it on the internet, called the Making Indians White by Gregory Blavinsky. And he gives you he gives you dates, he gives you names, he gives you the court proceedings that they were doing, and the whole thing that they were doing to create this caste system where the light-skinned Native American was considered a native of this country or indigenous to this country, and the white man did business with him. And those who were considered dark Indians or dark natives, those who had dark skin, it didn't matter if their hair was wavy, straight, curly, or kinky. If they had dark skin, they were considered Africans, and they stuck them amongst the slaves. But most people don't. Like I say, you have to go read the history of the Spanish conquest, because when you read the history of the Spanish conquest, the word Negro, which is basically a sub-definition of the Spanish word negros, which is what the Spanish called the indigenous population, called them black, which means that the indigenous population was black, brown, dark brown, light brown, very light skinned, and so forth. So just like Africa, you have different shades of indigenous people. Here in North America, there were different shades of indigenous tribal people already here before the English came. And most people don't know about how the English came into the game anyway, because the people who colonized here first and started here were the Spanish. That was a business deal that the Spanish did with the English people in 1586 to 1587. It was a business deal to give a lot of their colonies to the Brits, and the Brits came over and eventually manipulated their way to take over and push the Spanish out. But I would encourage people, do your history. Open your mind to history. Don't just read history here in North America. Matter of fact, there's more lies here in North America being told in history than they're doing in Europe and other countries where they're telling the truth and dropping the raw and uncut. So let me continue the other portion of the story of the Great Law of Peace. So anything you want to add to this, Queen?
Oh, no, it's sounding good to me right now.
So let me finish this. Yeah, we will continue.
While these thoughts were swirling through his head, Jigonsase stepped forward. She hadn't believed that Tadadaho could be reformed, but the Peacemaker did, and she trusted the Peacemaker. Even so, she could see the evil ideas slithering through his mind, and knew that she must put a stop to them. She walked straight up to him, looked him in the eye, and ordered him to strike her. Aghast and confused, Tadadaho looked around. Who was this woman to give him orders like this, and such orders? He couldn't strike a woman, especially a clan mother, and he told her so. Is that not what you do? Jigonsase challenged. I've heard many tales of your power, of how you, a powerful man, strike the women in your longhouse, how you make men afraid of you by threatening their lives. Why should you now hesitate to do to me what you have done to so many others? Isn't that what your power is for? Will that not be how you lead our people? Tadadaho bowed his head in shame. Suddenly he saw all of his plans for what they were, greedy and cruel. He begged for forgiveness. Jigonsase saw that spark of goodness take light in him, and filled with mercy, she ran her hands through his hair and soothed him like a mother soothes her child. Now that Tadadaho was ready to listen, Hiawatha explained the rest of his proposal. All votes of the council would be unanimous. In effect, they all had veto power, and all the nations would be equal, but Tadadaho would vote last, and as the leader they all looked to, he had a responsibility to use his veto only when he could give a strong reason for his refusal. Tadadaho agreed, and at last the Onondaga joined the Great Peace. All 5 nations now agreed to peace, but it remained for them to finalize the laws of their new confederacy. Jigonsase, with her knowledge of every nation, sat with the women's councils and decided which of the former war chiefs would now become council representatives. These men were given antlers to represent their new position, and the women who put them there received strings of Hiawatha's wampum beads, signifying the fact that whoever they might choose to sit on the council, the seat itself belonged to the women. All these representatives gathered for the first time on the shores of Onondaga Lake, where the Peacemaker awaited them. Before the meeting began, he asked one of the warriors for an arrow from his quiver. Then he held up the arrow and snapped it. See how easily this breaks, he told them. Then he asked for a warrior from each of the 5 nations to give him an arrow. Bundling these 5 together, he bent them with all of his strength, but the 5 arrows together held firm. When we are united, he explained, we cannot be broken. Before they could begin the council, however, the Peacemaker insisted that all of them cast away their weapons and commit their minds to peace. He chose a white pine tree whose needles grew in bunches of 5. All the warriors uprooted the tree, buried their weapons under its roots, and then replanted it, and became lawmakers instead. An eagle came to perch on this new tree of peace, and the Peacemaker explained that it would watch over them and sound a warning if danger approached. Centuries later, men like Benjamin Franklin and George Washington would sit down with the descendants of the first Haudenosaunee Council to learn how they had governed themselves for so many generations. They studied the Great Law of Peace, and later they adapted many of its principles into the U.S. Constitution. As a tribute, they adopted the eagle as their national symbol, and placed a bundle of 13 arrows in its claws, one for each colony of the new United States of America. But that's a story for another time. Back to Hiawatha. The council began to draft laws forged by the lessons the peacemaker had taught them. He had always insisted that the government must function for the will of the people, so they decreed that leaders must evaluate how each new law would affect the people for 7 full generations. If they failed in their duties, they would be warned, and then removed from office. Only clan mothers like Jigonsase could appoint a new leader, and the peacemaker believed that government only functioned if everyone had a role and a voice, so the men's and the women's council of each clan received the power to propose laws. As the Constitution took shape, Hiawatha wove together strings of wampum to commemorate the new laws. Holding the wampum would help people remember, he hoped, the spirit of each law, and the council that passed it. Determined to create something grander than the simple string he had given the peacemaker at their first meeting, Hiawatha designed a broad belt that would become the symbol of the Confederacy. White lines of peace connected the 5 nations of the Confederacy, with the Onondaga at the center, represented by the Tree of Peace. Those lines extended to the edge of the belt, for he hoped that the Great Peace would extend outwards to other nations, an invitation which the Tuscarora Nation accepted in 1722. Haudenosaunee history is seldom told outside of their own traditions, but the legacy of Hiawatha remains a vibrant one. His name and the name of his fellow council members survive as titles given to the council leaders who inherited their seats, and a man called Tadadaho leads the council to this day. The original Tadadaho followed through on his promise to Jigonsase, and became a leader that the Haudenosaunee could be proud of, as well as proof of the peacemaker's conviction that men forged in war still carried peace in their hearts. As for the peacemaker, he alone had no successor, for he explained that other men could counsel the people, but none could do as he had done in founding the great law of peace. His work here was done.
There you go. That's the story of the great law of peace, of how it was founded, how it was put together by by our indigenous native ancestors. A beautiful, wonderful story. And when you even heard it from the storyteller himself, that he said a lot of the practices, a lot of the documentation that the indigenous people put together when they put together a great law of peace, a lot of it was adopted into the Constitution. I think it was an understatement when you think about it. I mean, the eagle and the breaking of the arrows. I mean, when you look at the Constitution, you see the seal, of the American seal with the eagle and the number. I'm not sure how many arrows that are in the eagle's hand. It reminds me. Well, go ahead, Queen.
Well, the number of arrows was 13 for the United States.
Oh, yeah, that represents the 13, the first 13 states, exactly, which formed the Union. Yeah, but it just never ceases to amaze me how this information was not told in school, and still is not told in schools. It never ceases to amaze me how this country today, in the year 2017, we claim to be a country that is inclusive of all people. We claim to be a country that is made up of immigrants and made up of people coming together to form a country, a multicultural country, a melting pot, Ellis Island being that symbol of people coming here. And the Native American people have never been closed off from anybody. They've always been a people of the inclusive when it came to embracing of the people. It's this country and those who promote and continue to the agenda of white supremacy that has kept us back, kept us always steps back when it came to education and educating the people, educating our children, telling the truth within history, telling the truth about black history, telling the truth about slavery, telling the truth about our indigenous native ancestors, telling the truth about the people who were here first. Telling the truth about the original people of this country of Turtle Island, and that Turtle Island was the original name of this continent by the people who were here, the first people of Turtle Island. And so it just never ceases to amaze me where people who want to give this country so much credit, because it appears that maybe when we take 5 steps forward, we take 3 steps back, and so don't get it twisted, people want to talk about, this country hasn't come so far, slaves, people still be in slavery. No, it wouldn't, because slavery, people being enslaved in this country did not bring peace to this country. That was one of the reasons why slavery had to end, because the indigenous people wouldn't stop their wars. The people enslaved in this country, which is our ancestors, who were indigenous people, who were the first people in chains, who were the first people on plantations, would not give up fighting to leave slavery. It's just so it would be an endless war, endless death. So, somebody had to think of something. Am I wrong, Queen?
No, I don't think so. Not at all.
So let's get down to some of the information that documentation that we want to read. You feel me? Like this documentation I got right here that has a side-by-side Great Law of Peace with the Constitution side by side, so you can see the comparison. Anything that caught your attention, Queen, that, because this is done in articles, as you can see here. But the first part of it I found very interesting. Right here, I think it says, that says 32, part 32, where it says the Great Law of Peace. It says, we have tied ourselves together in one head, one body, one spirit, one soul, to settle all matters as one. We shall work, counsel, and confirm together for the future of our coming generation. Now, when you go over to the comparison part of the Constitution, it reads, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice and ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote for the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America. So kind of sort of reads the same. You can see the similarities. Would you agree, Queen?
You can see the similarities by both statements saying that they are trying to work as one for the benefit of the people.
Exactly. Now the Great Seal right here. I'm looking at the Great Seal of the Constitution, which had, like you said, it has 13 arrows in one hand and look like a tree, a leaf. Kind of remind me. Remember,
it's an olive branch.
An olive. Okay, they want to call it an olive branch. It doesn't to me, it doesn't look like an olive branch. But you do notice in the Great Law of Peace, they had commemorated a tree as a symbol, and that tree had 5 thistles on it, and those 5 thistles represented the first 5 tribes that came together to ordain and to, ordain the Great Law of Peace. So let me read this right here, which is showing the comparison. 5 arrows. This is the Great Law of Peace I'm reading right here. 57, Great Law of Peace. 5 arrows shall be bound together, very strong, and each arrow shall represent one nation. As the 5 arrows are strongly bound, this shall symbolize the complete union of the nation. Thus are the 5 nations united completely and enfolded together, united into one head, one body, and one mind. Therefore they shall labor, legislate, counsel together for the interest of the future generations. This was their symbol. Now on the other side is showing right here the comparison, is showing the United States Great Law, which it shows the arrows and the eagle and so forth. Now let me go on down here. How about this one right here? You want to read one, Queen, please?
Great Law of Peace 59. This string of wampum vests the people with the right to correct their erring lords. In case a part or all lords pursue a course not vouched for by the people, and heed not the third warning of their women relatives, then the matter shall be taken to the General Council of the women of the 5 nations. If the lords notified and warned 3 times fail to heed, then the case falls into the hands of the men of the 5 nations. The war chiefs shall then, by right of such power and authority, enter the open control to warn the lord or lords to return from the wrong course.
Stop right there. What I found interesting, what I love about the Great Law of Peace, is that each council represented a tribe with a number of men in it, but it was headed by a woman who sat at the head of the seat of the council. I mean, I thought that was wonderful. And not only that, these women who sat at the head of these councils had a council of women elders, which were the clan mothers, who had the last word, even can remove a man from his seat if he's breaking the Great Law of Peace. Ooh, I mean, that's power for a woman, sister. What do you think, Queen? That's power for a woman. If you notice, the very patriarchal, our so-called democratic government and form of government with this different branches and senates and all that, very patriarchal. Even though today they let women be a part of it and women can run for office, that's a beautiful thing. Finally, thank the great mother, women can run for office and women can make vital decisions in government and sit on different seats in different departments and offices within the government. But it wasn't always that way. At one time, this country, I mean, just as far as back as the 1950s and 60s, was predominantly a male-dominated government. And that actually sneered and looked down on women who wanted to run for office. So from the very beginning, our indigenous ancestors incorporated women to make vital decisions, to look over the decisions that men were making. Is that not true, Queen?
Absolutely, because they respected their mothers and the elder women.
So it just shows how much in our country still today, even though women are given more opportunities, women had to fight for those opportunities that they shouldn't have to have fought for. It just shows how dickheaded and patriarchal European people are. And you know, they can give themselves all the credit they want, but see, that's not credit that should be given when women should have an equal floor mat from the very beginning. It just shows how primitive white men are, in my opinion. Whenever they hold to their dick, hold to their stubborn patriarchal dominant ways to the degree that they're willing to subservient their women to a position of secondary and third place, when they wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the women. If it wasn't for the women, they wouldn't be men. So, you know, on that note, that's just my perspective. I don't expect anybody to agree with me, but that's just my perspective. So I found that very interesting. This right here, anybody can go find this and download this PDF file, which is Const Compare, CONST, Const, which is short for Constitution, Const Compare Materials.pdf. You can go find this. It's a comparison of the Great Law of Peace. You get an opportunity to read the Great Law of Peace in comparison to the Constitution. Const, CONST, Compare Materials.pdf. Go check it out, download it, enjoy it yourself. You get an opportunity to see. This is Black History Month, people, and this is what we do here at the Black Village Community Podcast. Drop nothing but the raw and uncut here every Sunday from 3 to 4 Pacific Standard Time. You feel me? And you can always join us. It doesn't cost you a dime, just a bit of your conscious time. You can chime in and join me and my queen, sometimes just me, it's all gravy, here at 855-445-9340. You can also chime in at 857-232-0155. And don't forget the conference key to get through the conference door, which is 947595. On that note, I'm short of time. It's almost 4 o'clock. I gotta go. But before I go, I'm gonna let everybody know the intro to the show. Boy, I loved it. That was Run DMC from back in the day, dropping it. I'm black and I'm proud. I'm proud to be black. That's a song by Run DMC, and I had to play that to start my show off because, you know, I love old school hip hop music, and to see that Run DMC made something, you know, I'm black and I'm proud. Man, I had to put that in there so let folks know I'm black and I'm proud to be an indigenous Aboriginal black man. You feel me? It also made me feel good to know, and I'd like to let you chime in on this, Queen, because you're not saying very much, because I know you had to work today and you still squeezed in. I thank you for being here with me, Queen. But, you know, it really made me feel good to see that Keke Palmer is researching, and that she's looking and she's searching out. She's looking for spiritual truth, historical truth, and she's learning. I mean, even though right now she's on this, she embraces the Pangea, that everybody come from Africa theory, but that's okay. She knows that she is native to America. She knows she's indigenous to America. That's the start. That's the beginning. And just the fact that she's there, that's a beautiful thing. What do you think, Queen?
I think it is a beautiful thing. I mean, she's looking through her own family history, her own family tree, and not relying on what someone else is telling her outside of her family.
Exactly.
I mean, that's what we all really need to do. That's how the traditions originally started, is tracing our family tree through their grandparents, and the entire line down. So if you want to know who you came from, you don't go and look to someone else to tell you. You go through all the documentation, you find your parents, your grandparents, and anybody else you can talk to who remembers.
That's real. Coming from the mouth of a queen. Yes, yes. That's the Raw and Uncut here on the Black Village Community Podcast. So, you know, as always, we got to go short for time. We only put in an hour for our show, so from 3 to 4, so I got to go on that note. But on that note, I will continue. I'm not sure if this is the last week. What's the day? Today's February 9th. I might have one more week and squeeze in something else on Indigenous. Like I say, Black history is Indigenous history, and people need to know that. It really hurts my heart that you got so many people who are enjoying Black history from a white agenda and a white perspective. And I say that because if it wasn't so, then we would have Indigenous history in our history books. If it wasn't so, then we would have Indigenous movies instead of whenever they talk about slavery or 12 years of slave, they want to stick Black folks and call them all African Americans. It really just cracked me up how white people are just persistent to call all Black people African Americans. Yet people in Africa who are wondering why we're calling ourselves African Americans, because the people in Africa don't call themselves Africans. They call themselves by the tribal continent from which they are from. If they're from, yeah, exactly.
Or their tribe.
Thank you.
But it's no different than anyone else in the world calls themselves from where they are and in their lineage.
Well, you know,
they're not the only.
A little bit different.
Africans aren't the only one who are puzzled over why we call ourselves African Americans. Watching a video on YouTube, and we had European news asking us, why are we calling ourselves African Americans? They know, even in Europe, that we're native to this country.
Yes, exactly. And you know what? We need to proclaim who we are. We need to embrace who we are. True enough, we got people from Africa who've immigrated here. They are African Americans, those who've immigrated here and became Americans. People who are biracial, like Barack Obama. Barack Obama, his father's Kenyan, his mother is a white woman from Hawaii. He's a true African American. But for him to sign into a bill and make it law to call all Black people African Americans, I thought that was an insult. It actually pissed me off. He did this in May 16th?
Yeah,
I believe something like that. May 16th, the 16th of May of 2016. And his excuse was to, I guess, so-called liberate Asian people. I don't know, because he also wrote into somewhere, taking off of the federal laws of
Oriental.
Yeah, Oriental.
Still in there.
Yeah, exactly.
But to label all Black Americans to be African American is an insult to those who are from the islands, insult to those who are not from Africa whatsoever,
exactly,
who live here.
Exactly. It's an insult. People.
You can't call an African American a Black person from Spain.
Exactly. I mean, I just find it quite odd. I mean, I would never say that Barack Obama did not do a good job as a president. He didn't do a great job. He didn't do an excellent job, but he did do a good job. So, on a report card, I would give him maybe a C, or I wouldn't even give him a B. Some would give him a B. I would give him a C because he didn't acknowledge. Anything when it came to Black America, the Black side of America. He didn't do anything for Black people. Now I understand he was the president of the United States, but that doesn't take away from doing for your people, because there's too many presidents through the line in this country that did for their people. I mean, like when they was giving out Native American property and they was giving it for cents on a dollar to white people. You feel me? And they wouldn't sell it to Indigenous people or Native people, but they sold the property to white people with a purpose. So things like that, just kind of piss me off. But on that note, we gotta go. Time is short. Be back, be Black, dropping up with the Raw and Uncut here on the Black Village Community Podcast every Sunday. Queen, you want to have last words before we head out of here, Queen?
Well, my lovely people, do stay educating yourselves. Don't focus on only one part of history, but look at it from many angles and not just hear from what the American white history says. Look throughout the world and see what they say as well. Go deeper. Expand your knowledge.
I totally agree. That's all. We got to expand our knowledge. That's what makes Black people a slave. You're a slave today because you make yourself and allow yourself to be a mental slave. And so you can liberate yourself by freeing your mind, by researching, by going outside the box and the parameters of what society tells you and looking for yourself to see truth. That's what it's all about, people. And so on that note, I agree with my queen. And my last words is, as always, may the Great Mother bring us together under the wings of her peace, her love, and her unity. And as always, I love chicken. So, as always, love, peace, and chicken grease. I gotta go. So, see you next week. Bye. Gotta go. I'm outie.